We're starting, though, with the big stories making the headlines.
To take us through those, we're joined by Matthew Wright and Julia Hartley Brewer.
We're going to start, though, with the morning. We're going to start with a bit of baby news. Our royal editor, Camilla Tominey, is here. Good morning, Camilla.
Morning.
Let's start with you first of all, then. And so, I suppose the announcement, was this a usual announcement? There was no picture of the baby, which I think is true to form. They were very late with Archie. Have you spoken to the Queen? Did she know?
Have I spoken? We had a chat earlier and she's informed. She did know about the birth. No, we know that she knew because the baby was born on Friday. So I think family were told, but the announcement did take Buckingham Palace by surprise in a kind of press office sense, that they didn't know that it was coming last night. And then they had to then respond with a kind of statement saying everyone was delighted with the news. Obviously, there's been a lot made of the name Lilibet, which is a reference to the Queen. She was known Lilibet in her childhood because she couldn't say Elizabeth. So I think her grandfather, George V, was the first to use that nickname, and then it just stuck. Her parents called it. Her sister, Princess Margaret, called her it, and equally Prince Phillip used to call her Lilibet. So that was a bit of a surprise, Lily for short. Diana, I don't think, took anyone by surprise. I think that once they had announced that they were having a daughter, it was pretty much a given that they would give the middle name as Diana. Significant year because the princess would have been 60 in July, on July the 1st. And that's when we're expecting the brothers to come together for the unveiling of this statue in her honour in Kensington Palace Gardens. What? Equally, the nod to the Queen might be an olive branch, mightn't it? Sense of tensions continuing between the family. And it's her Platinum Jubilee next year. We found out about that 4-day celebration for everyone in the UK in June. So maybe that's just a kind of attempt to ensure that there are ties that bind across the transatlantic divide.
Well, it's lovely news, that's for sure. Really lovely for the family. Do you think that we will see a photograph of her anytime soon, or do you think they'll treat things a bit differently, do it their way and want to keep her more private this time?
Well, if we do see a photograph, I wouldn't hold your breath, because if you remember when Archie was born, we got a photograph, but it was of his little foot.
That's right, yeah.
And therefore, if you're thinking you're going to get a smiley baby face photo, that may be some weeks coming. I would be surprised if they didn't share some imagery this week, though, not least because they're kind of so au fait with social media and they're into their kind of like nice black and white Instagram stats. So perhaps there'll be something, but so far nothing. So we'll have to wait and see.
Right, thank you, Camilla.
Thank you
very much indeed. Let's move on to some of the other stories. We've got our second point here, which is, we're talking about June the 21st, of course, supposed to be our day of freedom. And there is discussion. It's pretty hard to pin down exactly what anyone's thinking here. A little bit of vagary on both sides, whether it's Matt Hancock or Boris is a little bit. Then you've got Sage, who are always conflicted anyway. You can never completely tell.
Boris has been consistent all the way through. 14th of June is going to be decision day, and there's clearly no decision is going to be made before then. Matt Hancock, again, the message that all government ministers have been making all the way through is, we follow the data. Matt Hancock, therefore, is put in a position when he's asked, the case is up 50%, but death's still, mercifully low. I feel that, as others have said, that the vaccine has broken the link between COVID and death. So I'm confident we're going to get there on the 21st of June, but I understand if you're Matt Hancock and you're being asked, the data is 50% up, he has to say, if we are told we have to move, then we will move. We're not going to send people willy-nilly. But I just don't see it changing.
So, Julia, if Matthew's right there, and a lot of people seem to agree with this, the vaccine has broken the link between COVID and death. Obviously, there are still deaths happening, and each one of those is an absolute tragedy. However, we're in a much better position than we were. We are still seeing these variants. These variants seem to be the reason that people are saying, well, we can't possibly open up, you can't possibly take away the restrictions. But aren't we going to have to sort of live with these variants forever? Therefore, are some people suggesting we live with these restrictions forever?
Well, indeed. I mean, there have been hundreds of thousands of variants of COVID already, and there will continue to be. We only get concerned about the ones that are literally of concern. And absolutely, we should be taking stock and looking at variants. This one appears to be more transmissible, the Indian, or now known as the Delta variant. However, as you were saying, if people are getting infected, but they're not getting ill, or they're not getting seriously ill, not needing to go to hospital, for looking at younger people in places like Bolton going to hospital, but just for a couple of days, needing a bit of oxygen, not in ICU, not at risk of dying, we're not seeing the death rate going up substantially. I really do think we are going to have to get to grips with the idea this is now a disease that is part of our lives, in the same way that every year we live with flu, and the vaccine has broken that link. And my big worry is, I'm not as optimistic as Matthew Wright is about June the 21st. I think it'll be Builders' Freedom Day, and there'll be maybe some changes, but I still think we'll be asked to wear masks in lots of places. There'll still be social distancing. And a lot of people say, well, what difference does that make? Well, if you run a business and you're trying to get people back in the office, if you run a cafe or a restaurant or a pub or a cinema or a museum or a theatre, you cannot break even, let alone make a profit and pay off all the debts from the last year and a half, if you are not allowed to have full capacity. So this is going to be make or break for a lot of businesses, and a lot of people sitting at home on furlough, or public sector, or sitting on their laptops at home in the private sector, simply don't understand how make or break June the 21st is for an awful lot of businesses.
Last minute change. I think the very worst thing and this, I don't see a way around it, is time and time again with COVID, is decisions are made sort of at the 11th hour because they have to be.
Yeah.
And if it goes the wrong way, then we end up stuck in a position of a mad scrabble of trying to work out what are we going to do now.
You saw businesses that spent a fortune on their perspex screens and making their business safe, and then they got shut down anyway. Yeah. And I noticed that
lockdown is a political decision. It's not a medical decision. It's not a scientific decision. It is a political decision that other countries also have chosen to make. A lot of other countries and US states have not. And no one is forcing the Prime Minister to do this. No data is going to force him to do it. It's a political decision, and we mustn't pretend that it's something that a government is forced to do, because it's not.
Well, why is it political then? Why is it a political decision? We can see, plain as day, we can see that the deaths are thankfully down. We can see that hospital admissions are flat. We can see that there are less people. Initially, this was all to protect the NHS. Well, the NHS isn't under pressure.
There were political decisions very early on not to go to lockdown when scientists were asking for it. When other countries were going into lockdown, those countries had much lower death rates than us. So there's politics. Every decision about COVID is a political decision. It's just interesting to see other countries have done very different.
If suicides are up, if anxiety is through the roof, if businesses are folding, I was about to say, there's at the pub near me, that's gone. Yeah. You know, then what sort of political decision keeps that happening?
Well, as I said, other countries have carried on almost as normal because they made political decisions different from ours. Stronger decisions, some might argue, earlier. And we've been sort of playing catch-up, but the vaccine is our way out long-term.
That's simply not true. Even talking about places like Australia, New Zealand, and the other side of the world.
Vietnam, South Korea and places like that.
The point is that actually, when people talk about being cautious, they're talking about being cautious about the number of people who die of COVID. When we're not being cautious about the number of people who are going to die of untreated cancer, the number of people who are dying with mental health problems, the children whose education, we talked about that all last week, about the devastation, the effects of closing schools, the effects on families, the effects on business. They are wide scale. No country has ever improved the public health and the longevity of its population by becoming poorer. And that's what we've made a political decision to do. And it's the wrong decision. I do worry we're actually being ruled by focus groups of people who've been scared out of their wits by hysterical media, rather than scientific decisions based on the real data, which says to us the vaccines work. Let's get back to normal.
All right, well, let's move on to a different story now. No politics here, only matters of the heart, which is equally as confusing. Dating app users will be rewarded with free premium features if they choose to show their vaccine status to potential matches. This is under a new initiative that they're doing. So this is Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and a variety of other apps all doing the same sort of thing.
Myself.
Is being vaccinated part of the dating scene? Is it sort of tall, dark, handsome and jabbed?
Well, as a happily married man, I decided to ask some of your young team members here, because I started off thinking, you get free stuff, essentially. If you declare you're vaccinated, you're going to get free stuff. What's wrong with that? Everybody wants free stuff, and being vaccinated is the sensible thing to do. Then I spoke to some of your younger team, and they stopped me in my tracks, because this is designed to encourage people under 30 to have the vaccination. At the moment, not everybody under 30 has been offered the vaccination. Yeah. Most haven't. So if you see somebody who is clearly under 30, considerably under 30, saying they're vaccinated, people here said, oh, well, that might mean that they've got some, you know, something, a pre-existing health condition that may prove to be unattractive on the dating scene. And I thought that was a really interesting point, that actually it may not work until everybody has been offered the vaccine, and only then will it be used as a sort of, you know, full for me, I'm a vaccinated person. I care for me, I care for you.
Julia?
Julia, yeah?
Yes, as someone who's been with my husband 17 years, I'm not sure I should know the names of any of those dating websites, and I hope he doesn't either. I think people's personal, private medical history should remain personal and private.
So if someone wants to decision to share that.
And someone wants to give that information, that's their choice. If someone doesn't want to give that information, the other person is entitled to make that decision. But I don't think we should be offering incentives like this. Look, we don't have any problem with take-up of this vaccine. The take-up has been magnificent. It's been way higher than anyone ever thought it would be. People are being sensible and sane, and they're taking the vaccine when they're offered it. I just don't think it's necessary to have things like this. And this is all like the vaccine passports. It's almost this two-tier thing where, you know, you've got the clean and the unclean. I just don't think it's needed.
The people that are trying to prevent mutation and the people who don't care.
But there will always be mutation. We've already been told by the scientists there's always going to be mutation.
If you get everybody vaccinated, which is the smallpox way.
But then that's a much bigger issue, because then you've got to make sure that the rest of the world gets its vaccines. And as one top scientist says, you can't scurry down a rabbit hole every time there's a new variant. And you have to vaccinate the entire world.
But it's this fascinating decision that Boris is wrestling with now, isn't it? Is whether we vaccinate children, sort of 13 to 15, who are at very low risk of dying, when we've got sort of vulnerable elderly people all around the world who we could help, who maybe if we could do more...
We're talking about that.
You know, we got rid of smallpox in the 70s through vaccination. I suspect coronavirus is a much harder prospect, but it would be nice to aim for it.
Thank you both.